Wonder coming at you from my van down by the river. So, I recently had a person in my comments section request a video on martial arts. And so I thought, since I've only done one video on my martial arts experience, that I would do one about my unique version of mixed martial arts, my particular mix. So that in case you're not up on these things or haven't been plugged in, I'll explain to you what mixed martial arts are. And they're just what they sound like. It's when a person who is a fighter or purveyor of self-defense methods starts to compile the best of numerous different different martial arts rather, and mix them together into his own version, his own brew, as it were, of martial arts. So my particular mixed martial art is a combination that I carefully chose. Some people become mixed martial artists because they start dabbling in different mixes. I'm not one of those people. I set out to find a superior mix, really, honestly, before there was mixed martial arts as we know it today. That when the MMA first started happening, I was a young man and I was very stoked about this new martial art where you were allowed to mix and match and fight people of other disciplines and other strengths in a no holds barred, no rules. In the original UFC, there were no rules and no weight classes. Now, as they mainstreamed the UFC from backyard wrestling essentially into private kind of speakeasy hushed public matches, and then transitioned that into its own televised art. Now they had to give up some of the lawlessness of it to make it more palatable, so the authorities would allow them to really do it publicly and promote it as a sport. So it had to have more defined rules, it had to have weight classes, there had to be some protection involved in protecting the health and well-being of the people. But originally, UFC was what it would really be like on the street, mano a mano, no weapons, just the two of you in a room, in a caged environment. So I got into martial arts, and there's a story there of the night I decided to never be a victim again. But at the age of 17, I realized that the old Marine didn't teach me enough for me to be confident, especially when dealing with multiple assailants at one time. So I decided to change my life and become a martial artist in that moment, and I began to pursue it as a grown man with a really specific agenda in mind, to come up with what I thought for me was the perfect martial art that no one could defend against and no one could defeat me based on technique. If they beat me, it's going to be because they've outnumbered me, they've outsmarted me, they got the drop on me, or they're just better than me, or bigger than me, or they'll get me by some other method, not because I chose a poor art and because my art had holes in it. I set out to have a martial art that had no holes in it. And my martial art, when people ask me what discipline of martial artist I am, I typically, sometimes I say MMA, but a lot of times I tell them that I'm a Jeet Kune Do practitioner. What is Jeet Kune Do, you might ask? This is Bruce Lee's personal martial art that he invented. The thing is, though, about true Jeet Kune Do is Jeet Kune Do is a philosophy more than an art. Jeet Kune Do is the idea behind mixed martial arts. Jeet Kune Do is the philosophy of taking the best of the best from multiple sources, whether they be fencing, boxing, wrestling, martial arts, different types, karate, kung fu, aikido, hapkido, wherever the source, wherever you have to go to find truth, this is where you will glean the pieces and parts that make up an original martial art special just for you. And that is what is behind Jeet Kune Do. That is more about philosophy and ideologies than it is about actual technique. Case in point, Bruce Lee got a concept from fencers called look at nothing and see everything. I'll repeat that. Look at nothing and see everything. It's the technique that fencers use of focusing on a button on a shirt in the center mass of your opponent, and then blurring your eyes out so that you're not looking at any one thing. You're using only your peripheral and not your focused eyes. So it's look at nothing and see everything. So this gives you an idea of what makes up Jeet Kune Do. And one could argue that Bruce Lee is the father of mixed martial arts, that he literally gave his life sharing martial arts techniques that were protected by Asian masters. And some people believe he was killed for disseminating these techniques to white people or Westerners. So, what kind of art is my mixed martial art? Well, first of all, I wanted to borrow heavily from what I consider the most brutal of all martial arts, and in and of itself, it's kind of a mixed martial art on its own. And I'm talking about Krav Maga. Krav Maga is brutal. It is guttural. It is not allowed in mixed martial arts, really, because it is so cutthroat and bloody. And the whole concept behind Krav Maga is to destroy your enemy as soon as possible in as few moves as possible in the most brutal and bloody and painful way that you can. If I'm wanting to defend myself, Krav Maga is where I wanted to start. So I started with some Krav Maga, but it's kind of hard, and it was especially back then, to find people that were teaching Krav Maga, and it was before the internet, so I did the best I could. But I ended up in another devastating martial art, which really is the basis for all of my work in martial arts, and that is Muay Thai. Muay Thai is the official sport of Thailand, and the young men and women who are Muay Thai practitioners are among the toughest martial artists on the face of the planet. That they literally practice by chopping down trees with their shins. I kid you not. So, I studied Muay Thai for a number of years till I got very good at it. Now, Muay Thai is a really active sport, so it's better suited. It's a striking sport. There are some stand-up throws, but it is what's called the grappling range striking sport. So most of the boxing range happens at arm's length. Karate and Taekwondo typically happens at kicking range, where Muay Thai happens at grabbing range or grappling range, stand-up grappling. So, being in that range, my next move was to study Greco-Roman wrestling. You will see my first venture into Greco-Roman wrestling in my story, how I made Rory Singer tap. And so check out that video to hear that story. And also, so since grappling and fighting in that range often ends you up on the ground, I needed to study what is really the newest trend in martial arts, which is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I wanted to study this for multiple reasons. One is I was probably going to be up against a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artist. Furthermore, if you are going to be on the ground, you need to know some ground fighting. A wrestler can tear you up on the ground, but you can defeat him with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. A ground and pounder, a brawler who will just get the mount on you and pound your face into the concrete, you need Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to deal with him. And Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is probably the best way to stop a ground and pounder from bashing your brains in when you don't want him to. And I won't get into the details of that, but I think most of you who are Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioners would agree to that. Now, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has dominated mixed martial arts for a long time now, almost from the very beginning. But they couldn't have done it had they not outlawed the headbutt from MMA. That the UFC outlawed the headbutt because it is too brutal. And the way that you beat a person that has you, a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artist that has you in their guard, is you just let them pull your head down onto their chest and control you, and then you just start rocking like this until you work right up through their grip until you're pounding them in the face, in the chin, with the top of your head. Exactly, totally, completely illegal in the UFC, but it is pretty devastating, and I honestly don't know how a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artist in the guard defends from that kind of attack, from the rocking headbutt. So, I I also wanted to learn locks and submission holds so that I could control people without tearing their head off. I learned first how to tear their head off, and then I learned how to control people without injuring them. And so typically any altercations I have often end with them in a submission hold, so that I don't have to pay for their plastic surgeons to put their face back together. And that it looks a lot better if the cops show up, if the person you're controlling is under control and they're not bleeding profusely. So Aikido and Hapkido are two arts that I also blended into my mixed martial art, which really consists of elements, because of Bruce Lee, from boxing and fencing, along with a base more closely related to Muay Thai. Some very devastating moves I borrowed from Krav Maga, with stand-up grappling in the Muay Thai and Greco-Roman, and as well as ground fighting, mostly in the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu style. So, there's 10 minutes on my martial art. I don't suggest that people just go out and spend their life learning one martial art. There is not one perfect martial art. Martial arts are like playing solitaire, the next card up, one beats the other, queens beats jacks, but it depends on the situation. On the ground, one might be superior. Standing up, another one might be superior. Dealing with multiple attackers, one might be more superior than the other. And by taking bits and pieces, you can't learn them all, but by taking and gleaning from different sources to create your own martial art, you can become quite an effective fighter. Now, having said all that, before you tear me up in the comments, I'm an old man who's lived an adventurous life, and I'm a little bit banged up, and my stuff don't work like it used to, and I haven't practiced in some time, and I try to stay limber, and I know that my skills are so complete and practiced in and trained in that I don't train hardly at all anymore because of fear of injury, and that I'm saving it up for the big one when I need it to defend myself. And so I'm no tough guy, but I will say this: God created everyone. God created everyone. It's Sam Colt made us equal, or in my case, I put it up. I had my Glock here. I was going to show you. In my case, Glock makes us even. So I don't rely on my physicality as much anymore as I do on a weapon because I'm getting old. But I try to stay limber, and I imagine eventually I will end up in Tai Chi land just to keep my health and vitality as I age. But anyway, if you're thinking about getting into martial arts, consider the mix I just presented, or find one on your own. And the cool thing is, it's fun to discover your own martial art. All right, till next time.